So I think we may be live, and we will just wait a couple of moments for people to kind of enter this first Inspired Live event on LinkedIn. We're so excited to be bringing this to you today. We are going to be delivering 12 of these sessions over the course of the year 2024. And to kick us off, we will be covering this session, which is covering all things AI and what you need to know about it as a publisher. So this is one of the topics that is on the top of most publishers' agendas, as we saw from a recent article in the Bookseller. And it's going to be a real key player in transforming our businesses outside of publishing as well. But this is aimed at giving some ideas, some kind of approach to how you might monitor and sort of put a really brilliant AI strategy in place. Obviously, with people coming along today, we've got on this platform a comments box. So throughout the discussion, we do really encourage you all to comment. If you've got any burning questions that you'd love to ask us or the panel, please do, and we will try and answer those during this live discussion. So without further ado, I'd love to then make an introduction to my wonderful expert AI panelists here today. We've got Sarah Lloyd from Pan Macmillan, who's the Group Communications Director and Global AI Lead. Sarah is an absolute force when it comes to talking about AI. When Sarah joined Pan Macmillan, it was in the last sort of revolution that publishers have seen with the digital digital publishing, where we didn't think the ebook might take off, and here we are again in 2024, and Sarah's risen to the challenge. We're in safe company with Sarah, being one of the top 100 most influential people in publishing, as well as Futurebook 40, which is a list of the top 40 innovators across the industry. So welcome, Sarah. And
thank you. It's great to be here.
It's so good. And we've also got Nadeem Sadiq, who is the founder and CEO of Shimmer AI. If you haven't heard of Shimmer, they are an incredible organization who can help publishers with their AI strategy, and they basically produce automated advertising to sell books. He's also a published author with a book called Shimmer Don't Shake, How Publishers Can Embrace AI. So if we don't quite get to everything you need to know today on this panel about AI, and there's a lot to talk about, then I would imagine, Nadeem, you'd be suggesting people go and buy that book because it might help.
I might do that, yes. Given that it's all about publishing, go buy a published book. Sure.
There you go.
Thank you.
Go publishing. So yes, we are going to get into this, and I'm going to be asking Sarah and Nadeem a few questions, just to kind of bring as much info and hints and tips to you as possible. So the first question up, Nadeem, I'm going to come to you first. Where is AI going to add most value to a publisher?
Well,
a tricky one, maybe.
Crikey. I mean, when revolutions are starting, and I think this is one. I mean, everybody talks about AI being the fastest adopting, and biggest changing technology in a very long time, possibly ever. I don't think we can really predict it, but sort of three areas that I think it is going to make a real difference in publishing. You might kind of say that, quite simply, it'll be in bureaucratic efficiency, formatting, proofing, those sorts of things, but actually a bit further than that. With my sister-in-law worked as a literary agent many years ago, and she used to recount to me stories of how she, as a secretary, first of all in that organization, was given a bundle of manuscripts, on a Friday, that were sitting in the hall, and she gave them to her friends, and those really completely unqualified people did the first evaluation of a manuscript. It's shocking, it's horrifying that authors were being treated that way with all the work that do for books. So I think AI, which is not perfect and not, the optimal solution, can, however, do the first run at, evaluating manuscripts and helping publishers kind of get through the massive output that they give and then receive from authors. I think commissioning editors can be helped a lot by AI. Looking at cultural trends, understanding the traction of authors, seeing where things are going, understanding the competitive, portfolio of titles in a particular area that might be interesting. That can really be helped by AI, and it's a long manual process otherwise. And then I think things like the BISAC categories, I never know how to pronounce it, but I say BISAC at the moment. If you take all 53 of them and say, well, actually, most publishers' catalogs can be compartmentalized that way, and AI can begin to say, with cultural sensors and evaluation of what's there, these ones are more interesting than those ones, and your portfolio isn't very strong in this area, so you might want to commission some, or front face some of these that you've been backlisting for too long, and those sorts of things. So I think there are many ways in which publishing will quickly benefit from AI.
Fantastic. Sarah, do you agree? Do you have other ideas around where it might add value?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Nadine said some great things there, but I would say in sort of broad terms, it's about really thinking how the machine can support us as humans. So we're the people with the relationships, we're the people with the emotional connections, the things that make publishing go round, I believe, and the things that connect authors with readers. But I think that AI can really support our sort of human endeavor, as it were, eliminating or ameliorating pain points, things that are difficult and take a long time or are very manual in our in some of the kind of things that we'd rather stop doing so that we can spend more time thinking and talking and making connections with people. And so then there's another element, I think, is it really can add accuracy and computing power to complex decisions. So where you have really large data sets that perhaps previously would have taken people who were very good with Excel or very good with sort of databases to kind of interrogate and understand. The great thing about generative AI, of course, which is what we're mainly talking about here, which is about language and can speak to you, is you can ask questions of a big data set in just a question. You can just ask a question and it can talk to you and it can tell you the answer. And I think that's quite magical, actually. And the other sort of broader area I would speak about is what we're calling here solving the blank page syndrome. So in many tasks within publishing, we're brainstorming, we're workshopping, we're thinking of ideas. And sometimes the worst part, the procrastinating part, is just doing the first word or, writing that first bit of copy or whatever it is. And I think it can work as a kind of giving you some ideas to bounce off. Yes. And that's really interesting as well, in that what I think people can think about AI is that it's sort of a person and a machine and it will sort of be quite isolating. But we found that working around a table, but with an AI sort of helper, has been a great way to run a creative session. So, there's lots of things. I'd say finally, enhancing capacity. We only have so many people in our organizations. We can only afford so many people in our organizations. Yeah. And I think AI can kind of ramp up our capacity. And just to sell Nadim a little bit, I guess, things like always on advertising could be a way forward. At the moment, you can only pay attention to so many titles at a time, but being able to sort of industrialize that is an exciting idea.
I agree with both of what you've just said there, and actually, sort of just drawing some comparisons with what we do in publishing recruitment too. Like, we're all often writing blogs, and you're sat there as well as doing your day job with a blank piece of paper going, how on earth am I going to write down what just happened at that amazing conference? Or that creation from a blank piece of paper definitely does remove the fear there. So and
you have quite variable experiences with it. Can't speak. Sometimes generative AI will come up with a pretty good answer pretty quickly, and sometimes it won't. So I've had experiences all the way from getting it to help me draft a letter, and I more or less entirely rewrote it myself But the weird thing was, I wrote it so fast because I had a straw man to do it from. And there are other cases where it's been closer to what we want. You know, for example, brainstorming, I don't know, titles or copy lines or things like that. But it has given us, again, something to critique and say, well, no, not that, but maybe this. And that's
it's onto something here, but it's not quite.
Yeah.
Lovely. I think, and obviously Shimmer are exactly in the right spot to help produce more with the technology, in terms of not having enough people hands-on when it comes to being able to advertise absolutely everything on the backlist there. So we'll move on to the next question. I'm sure we can come back and revisit if there's anything else that pops up along the way, but what challenges or risks should publishers be aware of, and how can they protect themselves against them? So I don't know, Sarah, if you want to sort of try and tackle this one to start with, and then we'll move over.
I mean, it's full of challenges. I think the great thing about the interesting thing about AI is the balance of risk and opportunity. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge the risks and we acknowledge the issues around AI, and that we really work together as an industry to tackle some of those. But talking a little bit more sort of organizationally about what are the challenges, I think, as with all tech change, it's about taking people with us. It's about that human. I will keep sort of saying the same thing about human-centered approach and using AI to support people, and that's going to be our primary goal. But in any new technology, and I've been through a few, as you referenced in your lovely introduction, it's really about making sure that everyone comes on the journey with you, and that, you know, there's always with new technology and with change in general, you have, you know, people across your organization in different places, and you just need to recognize that and ensure that the people who are concerned or worried, you're giving them enough information and you're engaging them, and the people who are enthusiastic and kind of running off with the new, that they're kind of, you also engage them and get them to perhaps sometimes champion some of the things that you're trying to do, some of the new things you're trying to do. So I think, rather than talking about the challenges of AI specifically, that's a little bit about sort of new technology change in general and how you can kind of work in an organization. I suppose the other thing as well is just pacing ourselves, but also staying abreast of all the change. The pace of change with AI is unlike anything else. And I would say it's a much bigger and more complex kind of area and challenge than we've had before. So with sort of ebooks or say digital audio, or moving from kind of more physical marketing to digital marketing, those things have largely been quite publishing specific, quite format specific to us, whereas this is a kind of whole world shift. So I think that sort of size of it can be a little bit mind-blowing. And what I'm sort of, a philosophy that I'm trying to take into the job is to, you know, keep it manageable. Let's not try and bite off everything at once. What are the things that we absolutely need to pay attention to now, and what are the things we can kind of just see how they develop? So I think that's a challenge. The other point I would make is, and there are other, this is not an original idea, other people have said this already much more articulately than I probably will. But I think a risk is that we humanize the machines, and we absolutely mustn't do that. We must really watch our language. You know, we're publishers, we specialize in language, we specialize in how we talk about things. And Nicola Solomon, the CEO of the Society of Authors, speaks so brilliantly on this. So if you know her, ask her, because she's stick on it. But also the author Ted Chiang said a brilliant thing, which was that artificial intelligence was a really bad name come up with in the 50s. And actually it's not artificial intelligence, it's advanced statistics. And I think that's something just to bear in mind, to remind ourselves, this is just computing. They're not human. I
think I'll sleep better tonight after that.
I think it's really reassuring, and I think it's something just to bear in mind when we sort of, I was talking the other day and saying, you know, AI can be such a fantastic creative partner, talking about that idea I was discussing earlier about the blank page syndrome. And then I thought, no, I've just used a human descriptor. That's absolutely wrong. It's not a creative partner. It's a tool that can help you be more creative. And it's really easy to slip into, but we must remember that.
Yes. Fabulous. Thank you, Sarah. Nadeem.
That was fascinating, Sarah. And there is so much to debate about it. I've been just beginning to toy with the notion of, instead of AI standing for artificial intelligence, calling it allied intelligence. So, trying to take the fear and the adversary, it being an adversary to us, out of the picture. I don't know how far I'll get, but I had an interesting experience writing my own book, which was, I was kind of doing it during the night. So I'd start at 8 p.m. and finish at 2 or 3 in the morning. And at points in that, you'd be despondent about how you couldn't write a paragraph or you couldn't think of it. Chat to, because I was writing about AI, I was chatting to AI to see what might happen if I put an idea forwards or backwards. And I quite quickly did get into that anthropomorphic groove. And I ended up liking Claude and the way it treated me. More than ChatGPT, which would go itself, it was just so cold and hostile half the time.
So interesting.
And I could see very quickly that people who were lonely or isolated or who didn't wish to share their thoughts too openly could turn to companionship in AI, particularly if it's allied intelligence. And you're not trying to make this kind of existential judgment as to where it should sit. And if we take all the shoulds out of it and just kind of get on with using it, it's really interesting. But anyway, to answer your question more directly, Susie.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's really quite interesting, and there's a much bigger picture, which if we have time, I'll turn to later on, that AI poses to us. But in the context of publishing, I think there is a legitimate challenge to the definition and the role of publishing. And it's really going to stem from disintermediation. So why do I go to a publisher as an author? The simple answer is because they can do a load of stuff that I can't do for myself. The less that's true, the more interesting the relationship becomes. And when you've already got, not thin, but increasingly efficient publishing houses, where author care gets harder and harder to show to authors, you get into a place where I think possibly people say, what is the point of having the publisher at all? Because I can do so much of this for myself. And I don't have the answer to that question. I think there will be a very good answer, as to why publishers should continue to exist. But I do think that AI is going to force a reconsideration of the equation, and it'll come down to economics as well. So I think one of the pressures is going to be how does the business model of publishing evolve, and how does it show value to readers and to authors? So that's one thing. And then to kind of coin a really rather fancy phrase, I think another area that could be a real problem is what I'm calling bland verisimilitude. So you see stuff that looks like Peter James wrote it because somebody's trained it to speak like, but there's something missing, might be a story about being dead one way, but it just never lights your fire. I think we're going to see an awful amount of that stuff. And it's just have a sort of palpable lifelessness about it. It'll be good, but it'll be unmoving somehow.
Yeah.
That's a risk, that we'll just be flooded with too much of that stuff, and the navigation around it will become tricky. And then I suppose the other area that I slightly worry about, partly because of the work that we do at Shimmer. I mean, at Shimmer, what we say is there's a ton of books, and usually in the backlist, that haven't seen the light of day for too long, and we can help them to shine. That's good for publishers who can make a bit more money, great for authors who get a bit more engagement, and great for readers because they're matched with better books. That's
Absolutely.
great. That's lovely. That's, it's not noble, but it's a good thing. The flip side of that kind of greater discoverability is hyper-personalization that asphyxiates people. So I know that you like cruelty and melancholy, and you're into fishing in Sweden, so every title I send you is going to have something to do with that. It's weird stuff coming your way. And we just won't be able to,
breathe.
Well, serendipity and I saw a good article, and I wish I remember who wrote it, but it talked about algorithms and blues, and it was about the flattening of our discovery process, because we've gone from active discovery and challenge and effort making to passive receipt of things. You know, because you're A, B, and C, then X, Y, and Z will suit you, so go eat that up. You know, that can become pretty asphyxiating, and AI is going to make it more so.
Yeah.
There's a high note for me to finish that section on.
I mean, Sarah, did you want to add anything to that?
I have so many thoughts.
I could see you like wanting to.
I want to speak. I want to speak. I was having to physically restrain myself to stay quiet there. So interesting, Nadeem. I mean, I think we've chatted before, haven't we, Nadeem, about, in a way, this is like the internet again on acid. It's like, but I do kind of think that some of the things we've seen with the internet and social media can teach us quite a lot. I'm just replying to your last point first here, in that people did kind of get sucked into, you know, rabbit holes and kind of echo chambers and whatever other metaphor you want to talk about with the internet and with social media. I do believe in human sort of resistance in the end, and learn, and the capacity to learn and to grow. And I think that I've seen, you know, particularly with younger people, that they're starting to understand that they need to sometimes switch off, that they need to sometimes not actually engage with everything on social media, that they need to check things for themselves. You know, like the whole fact-checking thing on the internet, that wasn't there, and then it was there, and hopefully it will get better. We'll need that even more with AI. We'll need it, you know, 1,000,000 times more. So I can see there being sort of societal and human and also technical answers to some of these things. But I also wanted to challenge you on the point about will there be a point for publishers?
That's
because,
not
again,
There's a surprise.
You knew we were going to get into fisticuffs about that one.
Right.
Because again, we've seen all these revolutions, and in all of these revolutions, people have said, you know, well, you know, what's the point of publishers? They'll never, you know, adapt to this one. We've been so adaptive. We've done so well. Our market is still growing. People really still like physical books, which is amazing. But what you were saying is that obviously, and I know you're probably thinking about AI agents, which is sort of where things are going next. You know, if an author can have an AI agent for all these different kind of functions, why would they need a publisher? The reason they would need a publisher, I think it's quite simple, is that the act of writing is quite, I think, generally quite an isolating process. The act of being published is a very public process. And I think the human relationships that we are able to build with our authors to help them go out into the world, and the human reassurance and conversation and lunch and all these different things that we do with our authors, events, physical events are back. People do like virtual events, but they probably prefer physical events overall. There's so many reasons why you need a person to take you to do those things and to kind of reassure you and get you a cup of tea and all those kind of things. So, sorry, I'm being slightly facetious, but I think there is, it's the complexity of the human relationship that sits at the heart of it, and also that sits at the heart of, as I was saying earlier, author to reader. I think, again, we've had a chat before about how would you actually feel if all the books you read were written by AI? I think you would feel really differently about that. And I think there is something missing. And it's not that you're consciously, as you're reading, always thinking about the author sitting behind that work. But the fact that you know an author did write that work is in your brain somewhere, and is an important factor about the reading experience. And of course, when authors become very popular, part of the appeal is, you know, perhaps the idea that you might meet that author or hear them talk about something else that they're interested in, or understand the backstory of what was their motivation, why did they write that book. And all of these things are so, machines can't do them. And I just think that's why, you know, we've just got to find the right balance, and publishers who do embrace AI and use AI tools and enhance their capacity and enhance their creativity by adopting the tools, not just the fastest, but the most effectively, and doing it with the most thought, are going to be able to give a better service to authors, whilst, and hopefully, because they'll free themselves up to spend more time on those human elements of what we do.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm sure you you know that I well, maybe you don't, but I have two new people in my life, two publishers, you know,
Yes.
who have come to know over the last year, and they're very special, both of them. And they, you know, I think the relationship between an author and a publisher is really life enhancing in many ways. I do think the equation is just going to evolve, as it always does.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It's an evolution of value exchange that's going to happen.
But that's been going on forever and a day, you know, as authors have, you know, for example, started, you know, promoting themselves sometimes on social media. But again, it's a relationship. How do we support that? How do we provide them with great assets to use, etc.?
How you work with that, and exactly. Absolutely. We've had a couple of questions in the comments box as well, but actually one of them is very much in line with the next question that we were going to ask anyway, which is, of course, another kind of challenge or slightly kind of not risk, but what we're worried about at the moment is our own careers in publishing with the impact of AI, but also in a more positive light, how it might impact our workforce in a positive way. But the question is how AI might impact our workforce and what skills we should individually be developing or hiring to future-proof ourselves and our businesses.
Do you want me to kick that one off as I'm
sorry, I totally forgot to ask one of you to answer it. I thought,
well, actually, no, Nadeem is hiring people too. We're all hiring people. So I'll give a couple of ideas.
Thanks,
and then I'll
Sarah.
hand it over to you, Nadeem.
I'll give you the next question to ask as well, and I'll just sit back.
I mean, I think we've said some of the things, how it can enhance careers in publishing. I think providing creative assistance, boosting our individual capacity, making us more than the sum of our parts. One of the things we think about sometimes is the idea that, you know, with a kind of a chatbot at your side, it's like everyone has an administrator, like everyone has a researcher, everyone has like this admin support type thing. Oh, there I go, humanizing AI again. Sorry. You see, like I've just told us we shouldn't do that.
No. I need like a gong or something.
But do you see what I'm saying? I think in terms of I think my advice to anyone trying to enter publishing is make sure you understand something about AI and that you've learned some skills about particularly prompting and how to work with AI chatbots, because you know, those will be skills that will be being looked for. But other skills, I mean, I would say this, but I just think an openness to new technology and a recognition that engaging with it and understanding it is going to become an expectation, I would have thought, in most businesses. People with ideas, people who are thinking about how AI might be leveraged in a business, particularly how can we use AI to work smarter instead of harder? How can we use AI to enhance what we do? So I think those are some of the skills. I've also got some ideas about new jobs, but how about you, Nadeem? Have you got other thoughts before I go on?
Oh, I think it's all a big stream that we're sailing down together, isn't it? I think, you know, it's efficiency and effectiveness that are kind of the big buckets, and they're slightly different. So efficiency is the elimination, and I don't mean to make that sound like jobs are going to be made redundant. I think for every individual, there's the elimination of kind of redundant effort, which comes with routine and bureaucracy and, you know, just doing stuff. You know, really simple. I was with the publisher last night for dinner. We were having fun chatting about things. She had never used Perplexity AI, which is one of my favorites. And Perplexity AI, I said, whenever you're thinking of Googling something, just try Perplexity AI. It won't always work, but just try it. And so, you know, she put in a sort of model question on my phone. And whereas with Google, it would give you, you know, 100 articles, which you would then say, well, I think I'll try this one. And then you read it and then you kind of make some sense of it. What Perplexity does is look at the whole lot, really, and give you a précis of that, which is pretty well balanced. And it gives you the references. So if you find a particular section of its answer interesting, you can go to the source of that and then dig into it further. That's fantastic. I mean, that there is a whole pile of efficiency that hasn't been available to us before, even though we've come to love Google. But this is like a whole step change on again. So I think the relief of bureaucracy and routine is a great benefit in publishing, and allows you to do higher value things, which I consider mainly to be critical thinking, so better decision making. It's always what leads to better stuff, because you've got more space in your mind and you can pass your information better. On effectiveness, it is really being able to make those better decisions, and probably to have more room for creativity too. You know, it is the blank sheet without a word on it moment. And then finally, I think it's a really obvious one, and it's of course one that I understand probably better. And I'm not a publisher by trade, so I don't know the whole ins and outs of the publishing world through experience. I know it through study. And marketing, I think, things like optimizing keywords, search engine optimization, keyword identification, all that sort of stuff. And of course, what Shimmer has decided to do, a very particular application of AI, which is create advertising, which comes from understanding the DNA of a book and allowing that to, be manifested in product descriptions and keywords and ads and all sorts of stuff. So I think the embrace of AI by anybody in publishing with the determination to be more efficient and then more effective is probably the way to kind of conceptually consider it.
And I think we've always had that expectation, like we've got it now for AI, but we've always looked as an industry for people with curiosity who can demonstrate that as well. They're curious about how this might help or make it more efficient, or sort of look into new areas of publishing or trends, or whatever it is. But Sarah, you're going to say about some ideas
some new roles, maybe. You asked, didn't you, about what new roles might publishers start to look at in the future. I mean, a few sort of sprang to mind. I was thinking, I do think, and maybe these will be on legal teams, or I'm not sure where they'll sit in the organization, but I think there's going to be a need for AI ethicists in business.
Oh, yes.
Because AI is fraught with ethical and moral issues. And I think values-based businesses, of which Pan Macmillan, I hope, is one, we are going to want to be really careful about how we apply AI, and that we do it in an ethical and a safe way. And it's a really complex area, as I know from trying to kind of get my head around it. And so I think there may be roles like that in the future. I mean, we've always had, business transformation change leaders, either kind of people who do that as part of another role, or who have it as a specific role. I had it as a specific role once or twice, specifically in relation to new technologies or big changes that we were undergoing, and I'm doing that again now. It's quite an interesting skill set, and I think increasingly those can be actual quite important kind of roles within a business, because it just requires that focus and that energy and that resource to really properly engage with something as big as and complex as AI. And then, more simply, there's AI prompt engineers, AI prompt trainers. And I think there will be probably, again, just as there was with the other revolutions in publishing, we sort of had to hire new skills, new technology skills, like people who could code in those days or whatever. I think there will be more AI engineers and development roles coming in, particularly into different types of publishing, and more project managers who can run kind of AI development projects and AI engagement projects of different types. So those are just a few things that I thought of.
And it's quite interesting, because I suppose when we look back at the digital revolution, if you like, back in 2006 or 7, we saw a huge sort of uplift in the job titles changing, with the word digital being added to them. I wonder how much that will happen this time round, versus it's just a given that every role will need to interact and understand how AI.
I do wonder, actually, because AI, I mean, she says having AI actually in her job title.
In your job title.
Yes, so that's happened. But it is interesting, isn't it? Will we see lots of roles with AI specifically, or will it be more that people will continue to have digital or innovation or technology or other types of things that, because I think AI is not the only thing that's happening. And I'm going to say that there are other technology developments happening all around us. And, you know, lots of roles will need to cover all those bases. You know, I've lots of people in my team who are working on all the changes that are happening in kind of social media and online beyond AI. And so AI will become a component part of something that they have to consider. But yes, it will be really interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah. Fantastic. So that leads us on to the final question for me, and then I'm going to really encourage our wonderful audience to send over your questions, but just a quick fire round, and I'm really excited to hear Nadeem tell me what his answers are here. We're not sure where it might go, but we're excited. So next big things for AI, and what should we watch out for?
Well, I mean, that was a rather big trailer. I don't mean splutter out now straight away. I'm sort of preoccupied by three main bigger ideas around AI, I suppose. One of them is actually around education. I'm a psychologist, but I'm not an educational psychologist, so I may not know what I'm talking about. But it strikes me, and one of the things that I'm sort of preoccupied by is that we are at a point in time where wisdom has been transformed from being recognized as, you know, you having a repository of intelligence and knowledge in your head, which you can randomly access and show, you know, great authority around in various areas. And I think it's becoming increasingly redundant to know stuff, and increasingly important to be able to critically think about things that you can rapidly and easily access. So I think the manner in which we intelligently communicate and interact with each other is really about to transform. And as a kind of theme I'm beginning to develop in my own mind is that the conjunction of Gen Z, who's incredibly good at not paying attention except in pointed bits when it suits, and who love many different sources of information, and are not in the least bit intimidated by technology, they are going to be super users of AI. And I think they're going to say, what are all you old lot banging on about? Just get the fuck on and use it. You know, that's going to...
Whoa! Sorry about that, viewers.
Get through LinkedIn. Oh dear. You see, LinkedIn. Anyway, that's one big area. I think what's really interesting to me is that this may be the first real technological change where ownership of the fundamental structures and DNA of the technology is with corporations and not controlled by governments. So, you know, do we begin to make a decision not to live in the UK or France, but instead to be in the Apple ecosystem or the Google one, you know, in our lives? Or, you know, now the new names, whether you're an Anthropic or an OpenAI and so on. I think some of those challenges are going to be really quite interesting. And it is not inconceivable, I know it's not likely to happen, but it's not inconceivable that we decide to abandon all these petty boundaries in our lives, like nationalities and borders and stuff, and eventually end up with a kind of an Earth president, who of course would be Trump first. But, you know, that may be an Armageddon that none of us particularly want to kind of be transfixed by. And then finally, and I think this is a really interesting human consideration or observation. What I've noticed is that when Midjourney 5 was given an instruction, until quite recently when Midjourney 6 took over, it usually did pretty well what you wanted, and then sometimes it's some really, you know, like, where the hell did you come up with that? And it wasn't just reversing hands backwards. It was just like, wow, what was that? And everybody's saying Midjourney 6 is so much better than Midjourney 5. And the reason they're saying that is because it's much more obedient. You know, you tell it to make a picture of 3 people eating chocolate mousse in an old-fashioned restaurant, and it does that. So we think it's better. And what we've always saluted in human endeavor, and actually in authorship, is creativity. But when AI does it, we call it hallucination. And it's funny that, you know, we're only content as humans, it seems to me, when we domesticate something. So the wildness of AI, its unpredictability, we think, well, that's not very good, that's a bit dangerous, but we love it in humans. And now we're happy that we're reducing this actually quite creative technology to something that is much more servile. And I think that's just an interesting thing to be thinking about.
Interesting. Thank you. Sarah.
Interesting interpretation of creativity. And I'm worried that all of those answers were in answer to the question, what are you most excited about?
Yeah.
I think they were all things to be terrified about.
Oh, thing. Depends how you educate.
Yes, and I guess it depends on your definition of creativity as well, because we do welcome creativity and surprise from other human beings, but when it's for good, I think I would add to that. But not when it's for bad. What am I most excited about? Well, my thoughts are rather pedestrian in comparison to Nadim's. I've been thinking, of course, being a publisher, about what might be exciting for us. I mean, I think next gen AI tools are going to become much more powerful, much more user friendly. They're already moving beyond text and images. You know, we've got generative video and music already appearing, and there will be all sorts of different things that you'll be able to do with AI. And so that's just kind of quite exciting, particularly when you think about marketing. But also the other thing that's happening already and is going to happen, I imagine, at a vastly increased rate, will be that AI will sort of become invisible quite quickly, because I think it will become embedded as standard in all the tool sets and the different platforms and the kind of services that we use. So that will make it easier, and, you know, won't need to necessarily always be developing AI things for everything we want to do, because they'll sort of be built in. But I think what comes with that is we'll need to be mindful, and we'll need to be purposeful and think about what we're signing up to. So when, you know, whatever it is, tool set or platform you use in your job introduces new AI sort of tool sets as part of the program, as it were, let's just be aware of what they're doing. Let's just make sure we're checking the T's and C's. Let's make sure we're thinking about, you know, what exactly how is this tool working? What's running in the background? What are they using? So there's some interesting things to consider there. Whilst it's exciting in that will make life easier, I think we just need to be mindful about that.
Yeah, and where are they storing the data, and just kind of the security of it?
Yeah, what data are they using? What's underlying it, etc.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I thought about was just this ability for people without hard sort of tech skills, as it were, but who have great ideas, to be able to basically be able to develop tech solutions themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of idea of low code, no code, which is being talked about. So because, again, of generative AI, the idea that you might be able to kind of create a computer game without having to do any coding, which blows my mind. Of course, then you sort of go, oh gosh, what's going to happen to the coders? But what will happen to the coders is that they will learn, you know, they'll learn new skills to work out how to prompt the machine to do that. You know, it's just kind of, it's like every revolution, as we were saying, it's about, you know, the new skills that we'll all have to learn to be able to work with AI to conduct our jobs. But I do think that's quite interesting, because I think for publishing, I mean, I'm going to say this, and maybe it's controversial, we're not full of very technologically adept people. We're not full of those. We've increasingly got many more of them in the industry, which is brilliant. But I think we're not full of them, because we're lots of people who like books and reading, and who probably still far too many people who did English literature degrees, myself included. So I think, you know, the thought that we might be able to do things that are effectively technical without having technical skills is quite exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. I mean, it's just, as I said, you know, it's draw so many comparisons in our world, in recruitment as well, and rec tech, and there's new products coming up all the time that could transform your business. But actually, you do need to look at your current technology providers to see what solutions they're working on as well, and just ask them what's in the pipeline, what's going to make this. How's this going to help our business? How's it going to give us more time to be creative and strategic and spending time face to face, which is what we like to do as well.
I think Sarah's comment about you know, the low code, no code and transformation, we're seeing it. Obviously, we've got quite a big R&D department doing what we're doing, and it's interesting that, you know, we have a CTO, a chief technical officer, who, you know, technology officer who directs all that we do technically. We've recruited from a former business, the CTO there, who is now just doing AI engineering all day long. So you've got two people who have the same skills. One is completely embedded in AI and AI engineering now. And that's a change which we've seen, you know, in mature engineers are really good at their jobs.
Such a short time frame that it's happened as well.
Amazing.
Incredible.
fun. It's, you know, I mean,
yeah,
you know,
it is fun.
I know you were kind of tickling me, Sarah, but the thing that excites me is change. I found, you know, and I think the things I talked about would change. I find the kind of challenge of the status quo always pretty exciting, and maybe that's what
Oh,
I
it
was.
is. It's really, because it's so fascinating, and it's you know, I think anything that makes us think harder is good. And you know, again, it sort of comes back to my original point about the importance of, you know, placing human beings at the center. If we think about AI, you know, very, very thoughtfully, very mindfully, very deeply, it will challenge us to think harder, won't it? It will challenge us to use our brains better, and that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to come to the audience because we've finished our questions as it happens. We've got a little bit more time just to try and sort of answer any other questions that these guys have. And I've got the first question coming from Lizzie Howard. So hi, Lizzie, and thank you for your question. So Lizzie says, a lot of conversations I have with colleagues about AI center on us saying we would like to work with AI, but this always seems very hypothetical. How do we go from imagining the efficiencies we'd like AI to create for us and move towards implementing them? So I think we sort of touched on it a little bit here by talking about, you know, having those conversations with our technology providers. But any sort of thoughts on that, Nadeem? If I come to you on that one.
I'm sure Sarah will have more on this than I do because she's obviously implementing it within a publishing structure. But my encouragement to everybody is simply just start using something. And actually, I just would start everybody on Perplexity. You know, why wouldn't you start there? Start fiddling about, change your search habits, and then start following things through. And I follow a chap called Rowan Chung, who publishes something called The Rundown every single day on LinkedIn. He's based in Vancouver. I know nothing about him and owe him nothing, but I just recommend him because every day he just publishes this little newsletter that says these are all the new things in AI. Here are the new tools. Here are the new jobs. And it is fascinating. Every single day there's new stuff. And I click on 3 of the 12 links for 10 minutes. And it really helps. So yeah, I've fiddled around with music production. I've tried some editing software. You know, it's all AI. And I would just do things like that. Just fiddle around and get yourself adept, linguistically at least. Yeah.
Brilliant. I love that. Sarah, do you?
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I really agree. You've just got to try it. You've just got to have a play. I mean, we're really fortunate at Pan Macmillan because we put in place last year a proprietary chatbot, AI chatbot. So everyone has access to that. And it's been transformational because exactly as Nadeem says, as soon as people actually try it, as soon as people kind of put their hands on it, actually it eliminates some of the fear is one of the things, but also once you're playing with it, you can imagine what it can do. And it is just a different experience. So of course we're lucky because we have this proprietary chatbot, and we thought that was really, really important that we had something that was kind of safe and secure and in-house and separate from the whole the whole world of AI and what it's been built on. But yeah, I think, you know, maybe in your personal time you can play with ChatGPT, or what was the one you mentioned, Nadeem, that you think is the best one?
Perplexity AI.
Perplexity, yeah. You know, I'd go with your recommendation. But not for everything. I only use our proprietary system at PanMac. So
yeah, I mean, Perplexity is just a great sort of transition from Google, funnily enough. But Claude is a much better assistant for writing things. You know, if you're struggling, then it'll help you shape it in a pretty sympathetic way. You know, ChatGPT is kind of sort of the most factual. You can see by my grimacing that I find it a bit grim.
You really don't like Chat.
I don't love, no, I love GPT-4, but ChatGPT I just find so sort of. I just feel told off by it.
Told off. I love it. So Sally Blackett's asked if AI presents issues with copyright, and this is a massive discussion. We could have a whole hour on this. And so just to kind of answer that, the CLA, the Copyright Licensing Agency, are working really hard with people like the Publishers Association and all the major publishers on this very topic. So I think rather than kind of answer this in a couple of seconds, yes, there are lots of complexities around it from that legal point of view, which are being worked on much in line with the efficacy and ethics around, around using AI and things like that. So Sally, if that's okay, we will move on to, because there's a couple more questions there. So Cameron, thank you so much for all your comments throughout. I've seen you popping up, and great question here. What role does our industry play in providing guideposts around facts, truth, and authenticity across all the various platforms? So do the platforms of today suffer from treating all information as equal? I'm not sure if either of you would like to tackle that one in any way.
I think we have a huge role to play. Because I think it's the foundation of what we do. And, from sort of lobbying through to other measures, I think that publishers will take up this case. I mean, I think, as what I was saying earlier with the internet and how, there was that development where fact checks and things started to happen on social media platforms, for example. I feel that that's going to be tenfold needed to be done by AI platforms, and I truly, well, I'm a little bit being maybe a bit Pollyanna-ish here, but I really am optimistic that this will get resolved. I just feel like if the AI platforms want people to engage and trust and engage with their with what they produce, they will need to have those kind of measures in place, just as the social media providers have had to. But I think, in another way, we as publishers have something. We have a product which, by and large, does a lot of this. And so, also in a kind of books versus AI, we have something special where fact checking and researching and source checking and all of those things are sort of part of our skill set. And so, yes, I think that we've got to we could do a better job as an industry of promoting the authenticity of what we publish and everything that goes into that, to make sure that content is true and is authentic, etc. So
I think it's absolutely spot on. In trade publishing, we also work with academic publishers and scientific publishers, and I think this is like a massive area for them to focus on. It already is. They have a whole peer review process in line, and potentially maybe that will kind of mirror over into trade publishing in some way as we develop. So it's a fascinating area, and I think
I think there's sort of obvious fact checking, I kind of want to call it. It's not a great term, whether things are truthful or matters of fiction. There's a more subtle truthfulness that we're trying to pursue in the work we're doing. I'm afraid it's still the case that if we prompt and say, show 3 people with authority discussing a book, it is very likely to generate 3 men, and the room will be not quite mahogany, walled, but it'll be tending towards that. And so we're learning that we have to prompt, show 3 people, at least one of which is a woman, or whatever it is that we do. We have to counteract that kind of. It's an implicit, it's a hidden lack of truth, and there are some, of course, who would say, no, it's truthful. That's representing the way it is, and we've got to put it right in society before AI can reflect it properly, which is an interesting debate too. The other one that we've been finding is that some of our Black authors find our advertising less good. And it's true. When you look at the executions, the advertising executions are advertising factory producers. We're never quite as happy with what we're doing, with Black peopled scenarios as we are with others. And, there are various points along the spectrum for different ethnicities and so on. So I think I have a conviction that, as much as it's possible for any group of people to come to an objective and philanthropic perspective, the people who are building the models are trying to do that. Some make a big deal of it, like Anthropic, who say that's what they're all about, and safety. Others are just doing it more subtly. I saw yesterday that a new AI came out called Scholarly AI that says if you're looking for factual research and you don't trust GPT exactly, they've done a version of it which is completely sourced and referenced. You know, we're going to get more and more and more nuance and subtle iterations of all the models, which you will be able to use. We'll become more sophisticated at selecting them, and we will get to the degree of factfulness that we want.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think we've got time for one last question. It's a quick one. I think we've almost answered it before as well, which is from James Mitchell. Sarah, where do you expect time liberated by AI to be spent by publishers in the main?
Well, I think that's entirely up to each of us to decide as publishers.
Yeah.
I would say personally, experience so far would be spending time with other people, having conversation, getting away from behind the screen, and actually just sort of having that initial set of ideas which enable me to spend more time with my creative thinking rather than just kind of painfully trying to get to the first word. I know we've said this already, but I think those are kind of generically the big things. I think in terms, specific job functions, it will be very different. But I think people will find out as they begin to play and test out these AI platforms. But it's great fun. You should just have a go.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, Sarah and Nadeem, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful to get really under the skin of AI and how we might use it. I think the kind of key takeaways are just go and have a go. Test it out, see where it works for you. I also just wanted to say thank you to our audience for the questions that have come through. Thank you for everyone for coming along. And we hope you've enjoyed it today. We will be running a series of these events called Inspired Live. And our next one is on Thursday, the 24th of February, where we'll be talking about how you build a meaningful network. But thank you, everyone, for now.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.